Start again. Dear friends, colleagues, welcome to the third China-Denmark Education Forum, featuring the theme of future education, of well-being and the right to be imperfect. Today, we feel privileged to have our two special principals here, as you can see in the screen. One from China, Principal Andrew. Future High. He actually enjoys multiple identities as the founder of Slow School and also other identities, and also as a social entrepreneur. He also is the founder of the One Together organization. I believe many of us have already participated, and we also feel privileged to have the principal, Mr. Mogens from Denmark. He's also I also belong to the Learn for Life Association. So we'll call in Principal Andrew and Principal Mogens. So around this very same thing, let's first hear the self-introduction of our two principals to learn something from you as educator from the perspective of education and the relation between Chinese and Denmark education. And now the floor first belongs to Mr. Morgan.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to present my background, I've been a principal on two Danish folk high schools for many years. The folk high school tradition is a tradition of enlightenment, meaning that you put purposeful learning both on the societal level and on a personal level. We call it enlightenment, means that learning is more than learning skills. You need to learn skills in your society, in your jobs, in your work, but moreover, you also need to learn about life, how to live a good life, how to be happy, how to develop your talents. And I think that's the combination of education and well-being, that you feel that education is meaningful. It gives you something to your personal happiness and your personal life. And therefore, education is too much rational today. It's too much escaped or away from the personal experiences. On folk high schools, we are learning by the Grundtvig model of lifelong learning, meaning that we all have a life story. And on that life story, we learn more and more by enlightening our life. We have it in our lives. We have it inside all we need to learn. We just have to unfold it and to be aware of it. And then we'll grow in our life. Then everybody can grow. And I also think in our tradition, the interaction between teacher and student is very important, because we can all learn about meetings and about dialogues. And also the teacher can learn. The teacher has to involve the students to make them engaged and to enliven them, meaning that they love to learn, the desire to learn. And when there's a desire to learn, it's also meaningful for them. And then they start up opening their senses, opening their heart, and being ready both in their mind, but also in their emotions and in their whole body. And then they are able to learn more specifically. So I think the enlivening and education is very important for well-being, for giving the learning a meaningful direction. Should I stop now, or can I continue? Or will you translate? Will you translate?
我听到您对民众学院的介绍里面有一
Okay,
些
I just heard that your introduction of this very high school. So we will unfold based on that. You mentioned significance, well-being, and the combination of learning that is of our keen interest. So in our upcoming dialogues, you can also raise your question based on that. So thank you very much for your presentation. And then the floor belongs to Mr. Andrew. Hi all, this is Andrew, as my English name is Andrew, as you can see here. And My Chinese name, Anzhu, is actually the translation of Andrew. The standard translation would be Andelu, but that was mistakenly translated by my friend, so that I have the nickname now. So here's a simple introduction of myself. I'll introduce myself from the perspective of career. There are three important stages of my career. In the first decade of my career, I served in some enterprises as an employee in the operation. In that very stage, I found myself finding it hard to capture the significance of working. So I was confused for a long time. So in 2004, while I was working, I started the 1 kilogram organization as I myself as a hiker. I loved hiking in the rural areas, so I went to a lot of rural schools. There are some tiny schools in the rural areas. Maybe they have only 1,000 of students. So I saw those kinds of schools, and then I started this very program of 1 kilogram to encourage the hikers to bring the materials and stuffs for learning to those students. And I also started a website with the information of the schools and the requirement, the needs of such schools. So after 2 years of funding this organization, I quit from my enterprise and was committed to the public good and started my second stage of my career. It was then that I started to work as a digital nomad, as I enjoy working while traveling. So that is the stage number 2. And my commitment to public good. And then here comes the third stage, the third decade. I started to dedicate myself to the current program called Slow School, trying to support more people to have their inner growth. So these are the 3 stages of my career: employment, public goods, and then slow school. So in my engagement in education, as I am now from the background of education specifically, so my understanding of education grew in my engagement in them. At the beginning, my understanding of education was quite simple. Many of them was based in the condition that many schools feature the lacking of such materials. And then I found, while engaging myself in it, that those schools just not only lack materials, but also experiences and localization of education. So we started the public good product called the 1 kilogram box to provide the courses that was not there yet in the rural schools, such as arts and beyond. So we have the course cut and presented to them to the rural teachers so that they can, without training, start at such courses. So then my understanding of education started to shift from that of material to that of knowledge, but that was not enough. So then until now, well, I'm at slow school, which is a significant transition to me. The reason why I funded slow school is that I found while I was engaging myself in public good and beyond, I found that life was not enough for me. I indeed feel that I was doing something significant to the world, but for my relationship with my colleagues and parents, it was not enough. So then, after such reflection, such retrospection, I started the program of slow school. So my understanding of education was about the inner growth, spiritually of human. So that is the transition of my understanding of education that I would like to share with you. I would also touch upon that. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. So the theme of this forum is the future education. And we have also 2 keywords here First, well-being, and the second, right to be imperfect. And we'll like to ask that, what's your opinion on the theme of this forum, and how does the theme engage with you? What is your understanding on the theme, Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, I think well-being is made out of having meaningful education, meaning that you are involved personally and deeply, and that your soul or your spirit is combined with the rational learning or the skill learning. That means that you will be happy and you will feel this mind of growth, because too many students today, they have a fixed mind. It is designed from outside, from the pressure of society. You have to be perfect. You have to optimize yourself. You have to realize yourself all life round. And by doing that, you are forgetting yourself. All education must start from the inner belief, from the inner demands, and from what you think is meaningful for you in your life. And that's very important, that you have this inner growth, because then you'll open your mind and you'll be inspired and you'll be curious, you'll use your fantasy, and then you'll improve your life skills. Life education is combining the skills to live in society and live in a social context with this more spiritual or more emotional soul part of learning. And that is very important to grow, because then you get into contact with yourself, then you feel that you grow, and then you feel it's meaningful, and you feel that you can have a better life. Today, too much education is away from personal development, and that's why we get all the diagnosis of depression and anxiety and being stressed and so, because it's only from a pressure from outside, from this acceleration in society, which is accelerating all the time by more competition and more demands to be perfect. And the social medias, they're also stressing that when young people go on the social medias, they compare themselves with others, they compete with others, and they find out that they have to optimize all the time. And as we all know, you can never be perfect, because the line of purpose is moving all the time. There's no definite place of being perfect, because it's moving, it's changing all over time. So if you're going to reach for perfect, you'll never reach it, and your life will be one fight to reach it, but you'll never reach it, and therefore you'll burn out. That's the risk, at least. You'll get depressed, and you'll optimize your anxiety. That's important problems, I think, of today's education and lack of well-being. Okay.
谢谢您。安朱校长，你的慢教育
Thank you so much, Mr. Morgan and Mr. Andrew, for your slow education. It runs contrast to the education today, as we are seeking higher, quicker, and better education. Yes, you mentioned two keywords, imperfectness and well-being. So, from my own perspective, I see that today's education is more about function. It's function-oriented. It encourages our learners to adapt themselves to the society, and many so-called innovative education are also function-oriented. It's just that the education that we bombarding was for the function of the previous time, but the current education is for the function of the future and today. I think that is crucial, as living is a foundation. And human beings exist in the society, but human beings got to be human beings because of our inner nature. While we are purely stressing adapting to the society, haven't we thought about to let the society adapt to ourselves? So when I saw well-being, that is a crucial inspiration to me. Besides function-oriented education, maybe we can have the happiness, well-being oriented education. So was that like That might be different from the function-oriented education. For function-oriented education, that was based on perception, based on cognition of our brain, with the crucial skills and the design of education. Such issues could be addressed to let our children gain the fundamental skills for the society. But for the well-being oriented education, that is more about feeling, more about experience. That means that as an educator, you are engaging with your students face to face. You are directly engaging with each other, directly and purely in your life. So, as an educator, if you yourself are not happy or you do not have the inspiration to search, to seek happiness, then the so-called well-being oriented education would not make sense. And for another keyword on imperfectness, as educators, we are not perfect ourselves. For example, there are so many restraints and burdens from the past, from our families, and also the regulations. And also, we are now living in a tectonic shift. During the past 2 to 3 decades in China, we haven't adapted ourselves to those changes even. So we haven't delivered such education to our students that is quite challenging. And as educators ourselves, maybe we can first see our imperfectness and then live with it, not as not as the high ones in the hierarchy, not to pass the so-called methodology to our students. Let's just face the fact that we are not perfect ourselves. We're just human beings. We're learning and growing. Maybe we can study and learn and grow with our children ourselves instead of purely presenting the results to our children. So, in our thinking of well-being, that is a common task for us all. So that is my understanding of the keywords. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. And I believe that our principles today, maybe the environment and also the audience of education are different. Mr. Morgan, I'm from Norway, Denmark, the on grown-ups, but slow school basis. Okay, so your audience are grown-ups too. Okay, I see. The imperfect grown-ups. So for well-being, as grown-ups, now we have already some life experience. And it's easier for us to have some understanding, but for our children that are still on the way, maybe you're also stuck in their aspiration to seek success. The well-being, the happiness you just mentioned is not so down to earth. They also have to address the real life issues themselves. And there is a key word in the Chinese society called tectonic shift, called breakneck competition. So on such competition, can you, as someone already experienced all of those, can you brief on that? As if you're always seeking success, then you will always be in competition, also featuring the anxiety Mr. Morgan just mentioned. And if we prioritize this, the seeking of well-being, well, that will be different. If we face a mother with a 10-year-old, she said that I'll have my child success first. Well, that is not contradictory to each other. It's just maybe we can have different directions. So is that okay, Mr. Morgan, to an anxious mother of a 10-year-old? What kind of advice can you give her? Why do we want to have some well-being oriented education instead of a success oriented one?
Yeah, I think well-being is made from the early childhood and through lifelong learning. And let's start with the kindergarten, the early childhood learning. Science and scientific research all over the world has shown that early schooling is destroying the brain and the character of the children. the children, and that's coming back to Andrew's statement about inner nature. We must take the inner nature of human beings, including children. And children's development is slowly in childhood, and we have to respect the childhood so that the children can play and can develop them in their own speed. Too much school learning is put into the kindergarten today with subjects like math and English and whatsoever. That means that there's some kind of personal development according to the age of the child is simply destroyed. That is being shown all over in more than 400 researches. It has been shown that early start with schooling in childhood will give later problems in adult life and in young life. Instead, much more playing, much more child perspective, much more respecting the development stage and the nature of the children. And that is to play and to self-organize and to let them give their freedom for playing outside, mostly, but also inside, and giving them the ability to develop themselves. We have too much control from society, too much pressure on the children, and that starts really from the kindergarten. That's a big problem. So the first stage, I would say, to create well-being from the early childhood is to liberate the children, to let them give their own space for development. Of course, facilitating them and helping them and bringing them up, but respecting the childhood and the child perspective. That's the first stage. And then, of course, in the public school, second stage will be to engage the children much more, to make it meaningful, not only to put forward the curriculum and repeat it and have robots to repeat. No, make up the atmosphere of learning with good learning surrounds and having the group work, the interaction, and the dialogue with the pupils. They must learn to engage themselves. We know that everybody is learning much more when you are activated, when you are engaged, when you're active. And therefore, the children have to be enrolled, have to be integrated in the planning of the education and also the implementation of the education. They just do not need just to repeat and to evaluate. And at least in Denmark, the evaluation and test culture is very problematic for well-being, because on test only those who do good, they are satisfied. Maybe those do in the middle, they are also okay, it's okay. But those who are the losers in tests, they really feel excluded and they feel not good. And so tests, they are dividing well-being for those who have talents, who are success, they can do it, but we lose a big amount of the pupils, and that's very problematic. Also, according to the teaching, because teaching is teaching to the test. The areas of teaching being most important for the test is having more focus, and that's a big problem because life education cannot be tested. Life education cannot be evaluated. That's a personal inner process which only the student can find out when it comes out. It might come out maybe half a year, 1 year after in your character, in your personal development, when you live in your surrounding, in your society. We have to give more space for the pupils to develop themselves and give their freedom to learn in their own different ways. Okay.
谢谢摩根校长。
Thank you so much, Mr. Morgan. I really appreciate this. Since Denmark enjoy really great happiness in the globe, and also Denmark also feature excellent primary education, and for the respect to education and the liberation of childhood, I really appreciate that. And just as Mr. Andrew just mentioned, the waiting of our children to grow, but considering the different situation in China, so what are your suggestions to such anxious parents? Okay, for me, I mean, I'll lecture them because I do not have too many things to lecture them. And second, facing anxiety. Anxiety is actually a reflection of feeling, of emotions. So lecturing may not help. I would like to share my own personal experience to try to link parents with me. First, maybe I'll suggest parents to feel their own life journey, life experiences, and do we start to seek success from the very beginning of our life? As we just said, that we all expect success for our children, but what about ourselves? What about our own life? When we were little, when we were in junior high, college, do we started do we start to seek success from the very beginning? Well, that might be true. For myself, I did not. I was playing freely. Actually, I wasn't scoring high scores in childhood, but I indeed enjoy my own games. For example, gaming and calligraphy and beyond. I had the freedom to choose what to entertain myself. From all of those books, I already control. I'm the master of my reading. I did not seek success. I started to feel that upon my graduation of college, upon leaving university, with the pressure of hunting a job. My teachers, professors, and parents have their own suggestions. So then I feel the aspiration for success. Well, back then, back in the college entrance examination, we also had the experience, had the feeling that such examination was not easy. We must strive hard to enter an excellent university, but back then, I did not have such perception. I strive for what I love, for where my passion lies. Looking back, I do not regret. I did not regret that I didn't spend a lot of time learning. It is exactly because such experience that I got to be the master of my own life, and then I can understand my own strength and passion. And then it is also because of that that I can study myself. Now the environment got better as we can have online schooling, but my experience of that indeed facilitated me a lot. That wasn't purely about learning. Maybe 60% of that was not about learning, but that was excellent. So I also expect our parents to ask themselves about their childhood and adolescence, to ask to ask themselves what is the happiest thing in their childhood and beyond? Wasn't wasn't was it really about high scores? We just need to focus on ourselves instead of the anxiety presented by the society. It is exactly because of the fact that you can perceive your own experience in retrospect to your own life. That we can realize that child, it is not children that let us invited and anxiety education. It is actually ourselves. So I'll suggest advise the parents to feel their moments of freedom, their moments of decisions. Are there some moments, despite the poor environment, that they can make their own decisions exactly by themselves? I had personally such experiences for multiple times. For example, deciding to quit because my career was also smooth in Beijing. And then I decided to quit and then to become a full-time professional in public good back in 2006 when China did not witness the prosperity of public good. I didn't know how to make a living then. I also wasn't sure about funding and such programs, but still, I made the decision of quitting and to engage myself in public good. And then some of my friends asked me that for quitting the job in the office, which was stable and promising, and choose a career maybe without a future. Did you regret? Well, I do not feel that way. From the perspective of material, yes, that wasn't better. But from other perspectives, I judge the gains and losses of my life, ask myself if I didn't quit and continue to work in an enterprise, which way would I choose? Although, although I didn't earn that much, but I found my own freedom. I found myself. So compare with many of my classmates and colleagues, they're still in their own path. Maybe they also score something themselves. Maybe they have some major job promotion and earned a lot. Even though for the so-called successor and their own journeys, what they have now is not what I want because we all have our own nature. There is not a benchmark for everyone. I believe exactly that this journey of mine totally suit my own nature. Although the environment and the Saudi feature breakneck competition around the world, but there are still some opportunities of freedom, of liberation. So we need to get back to ourselves to feel and make decisions. Because upon making decisions, there are always gains and losses. It is exactly in such moments that you feel liberated. As parents, sometimes actually we are controlled by something. They do not have the freedom or the opportunity, the capacity to choose to make a decision. So I suggest them to retrospect, to see that you're already doing great. You already have the resources to support your children to take a different path of life. So I believe that with adequate resources, many parents could support that. It's just it is because of the inner fear of such parents that make them fear that their children might not do well in those paths. So I'll suggest those parents to retrospect themselves with their own experiences. Okay, thank you so much. In China, principals like Mr. Andrew, they can define their passions and have the courage to take a different journey. Actually, there are not a lot of them in China. So I would like to ask Mr. Morgan, how do you feel about the experiences, the life journey of Mr. Andrew? So are there a lot of people like Mr. Andrew in Denmark around you?
Yeah, we have a tradition in Denmark about popular education. In 1844, the first Danish folk high school was established. That was in the time of, well, the peasants were outside society because they felt included. Felt excluded. They were not responsible. They were not integrated. So historically, the folk high school, the popular enlightenment, have made them aware of being an active citizen and involving themselves and being responsible. And in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, they went to the folk high schools to enlighten themselves, to learn about Danish history, Danish poetry, Danish songs. This about enlivening them, opening their heart to their human personal development. And that was the time where they were growing. And then they got enlightened. Then they went back to their local community and they made cooperatives where they were organizing themselves, self-organization of their farms and their farm products, so that they could make associations to control the whole way from the farm to the consumer. So that was a place for exercising democratic values. They were made this association. They had to register members. They had to communicate. They had to make decisions, and they had to govern this association. So that was a very important training field. I think today we see that many people have too few fields of training involvement, because if you are just directed from upside, from this top-down system, then you don't evolve your own abilities, your own engagement. Denmark, I think, basically is a bottom-up society where the people is respected and the knowledge and the experiences of the people is the basis for involvement and for influencing the government. So I think but that is also threatened today because the technocratical level of society is growing and the bureaucracy is growing. So there is also a dilemma in Danish society between the popular enlightenment, the popular influence, and then the pressure and the professionalization of the bureaucracy and the technocracy. But I think there will be a new turnaround, because many young people in Denmark, they would like to make events and demonstrations according to, for instance, the climate actions. There are many climate actions in Denmark made in colleges and so, where the young people, they take the responsibility themselves, and they do actions and events and try to make visible this big challenge we have about the CO2 emission and the climate changes. We have a good history in Denmark about popular enlightenment, but today it's also threatened by also the competition between the whole world, because we see Denmark as a competitor to all other countries, and then human beings should be a capacity to compete, and that is this control, this outer pressure from society, and that is also destroying many young people, so they get depressed and have anxiety and so. Yeah.
谢谢，这也是我们当下中国社会
Okay.
越来越
Thank you so much, Mr. Morgan. It is also because of the breakneck competition in China. We have also the same issues today. So I really appreciate the theme of the right to be imperfect, which reminds me that for so many years, there's someone from other houses, from other families that really bother, really hinder the children. There is always a child that is perfect in all respects, and that is really annoying for our children. So why would the parents have such an imaginary image of the so-called perfect child for in other families? Especially now, we have the policy of having 2 to 3 children in China. Parents are also comparing with each other. There are also bad children and good children in families. For example, when you were little, maybe there were also, I was the so-called perfect one because I ranked the first in class in terms of scores. But as I was born after 1970, there was not so many competitions back then. We feel relaxed, conversely. So what about the image of the so-called perfect child for another family? So you do not feel the pressure, right? So is there similar phrases, similar idioms in Denmark? Like the parents say,
Yeah, but I think the parents, they are wrong because they compare today's education with their own education, maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. And today we have to educate and to give competencies for the future. And we can see in the future, if we take the labor market, then it will change dramatically. And it is changing these years, but it will change much more in the coming years. There will be such an automatization and robotization and you know, our intelligence will be technically made so that the labor market will change. Much of unskilled workers will have no jobs in 10, 20 years. So the human aspect, how to be ethical, how to guide yourself, control your emotions, and change your mind and make it into a growth mind will be much more important in the coming years. And maybe parents are not able to look into the future. They look at now and the past. So they have really to open their minds on behalf of the children, because the children, they're going to live in another society, in a future society. And this society will be dramatically different from today's society. And we have to inspire the parents to give the children the freedom to develop their nature, their personality, their character, because that will be much more important in the future. It's important today, but it will grow because of this automatization and artificial intelligence and all this kind will dominate our society and our production life much more. And also according to nature and sustainability, we have to teach our children to feel connected to nature, because else we cannot conquer the threat of the climate crisis. The climate crisis is growing year by year, and all future children, all future people have to realize that. That means a new mindset, a new understanding of the connectedness with nature and the dependency on nature. We have to produce and live with nature, in nature, and not dominating and stealing from nature. So there's a new mindset for the future, which is just evolving today, but it will be much more important in 5, 10, 15 years. And we have to educate the children and the youth for the future and not for today.
Okay, we really appreciate that. Yes, we're now entering, sorry to break in, we're now in the epoch of artificial intelligence. Okay, Mr. Andrew, you can go. Okay, I can add something about the so-called perfect child from other families. I think maybe we can try to ask our parents that, do you know what you need? Do you understand the mind of well-being? Actually, many of our parents do not see that. They're only focusing on the life of others and maybe the life of those celebrities from the TV. They only focus on the celebrities and how they live their life. They do not really delve into their own life, so that they have such a trend of focusing on the so-called perfect child. They do not know who they are and what they want and how do they understand well-being. Back to our thing. So they do not have the value of well-being. They haven't inspected in well-being, which is jeopardizing. Just telling them how to do and what to do is not enough, since maybe they cannot understand that from the perspective of their belief, unless they can actually understand their previous experiences and their emotions, until they gain their own answers instead of answers to others' life, so that they can start to focus on the well-being of their own children instead of others. So what's significant is to let our parents see themselves, to look into themselves, which is significant. So that is what I want to share with you. I couldn't agree more that children are not anxious, actually. Anxiety should stay away from childhood. The anxiety of our children was presented by the outer society, by parents. It is because that many of our parents do not know what they want, and they have their own expectations for their own children. So, to educate children who are happy, our educators ourselves must be happy ourselves. So, there might be three features of our happy educators. First of all, a happy educator faces multiple students of multiple features. So, how can they do that? Mr. Morgan, you have years of experience in education, so could you describe a happy educator?
A happy educator is a person who is alive, who is having a good life and having access to his or her senses and fantasy. You know, being an educator, you must be curious and you must be lifelong learning. You never stop as an educator. You must be part of the life just here and now, and making you awakening, making you open-minded, and just engaging you in your own life, and also being aware of where you are in your life, because we have different stages in our life, young adults and elderly, and so, and just reflecting over life and being curious and using your fantasy is very important, because if you only have a robot as a teacher, then you will also roboticize your children, and there's a risk today that we have introduced much digital education, and in some ways it's good because it makes a good contact, a good communication, but it might also lose this face-to-face exchange of body language, emotions, intentions, and so. We saw it under the pandemic in Denmark, where much education was digitalized. And of course, we came through it and we made it, but there was a great demand after the pandemic period that we should meet again. We should feel each other. We should socialize again. We should be together. We should face each other, because education is much more than technical delivery. It is simply being together and socializing, and making this atmosphere of curiosity and using your fantasy in discussions, in dialogues. So the physical environment and the physical being together is extremely important in schooling. The focus school is a boarding school, and in focus schools we get much more because we live together. We have the classes. A focus school is for maybe half a year, and then you have the classes, your school, but you also have your home for 6 months. And being together 24 hours a day, you have this informal learning, meaning that you learn from other students also, sharing knowledge and experiences and visions and dreams for the future. So we must really also focus on this informal learning, because we learn all times, all places. We just have to be aware of it and to select it together and use it in our life. So my conclusion is that an educator must be alive, must be aware of what life is to him or her, and reflect and be on the way, all the time.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your expression of always on a journey, as now we're entering the epoch of lifelong learning. So that is the status that we enjoy the most as an educator. And I feel that maybe you just did the answer of Mr. Andrew, Mr. Morgan. Yes, I couldn't agree more on that. Well, what Mr. Morgan said was also my opinion. Yes, I thought 3 features. First, the ability to perceive. They can perceive their inner self, about their emotions and inner the minds and feelings. As long as you can perceive yourself, you can understand yourself, that is crucial. And it is also through that way that you see the imperfectness of yourself and your actions that can make a difference to the society. So the first keyword is perception. And second, the ability to accommodate. Perception, your own imperfectness is not enough. You must also accommodate. As long as you can accommodate, you can adopt yourself, you can face your imperfect self, and then we can move to the third step, the courage to make a difference, to take an action. So these are 3 steps. As a happy educator, as educators are mirrors of students. If you can perceive yourselves, then you can perceive the emotions and feelings of your students, or all of your perceptions will be guessing. And it also holds the same that if you can accommodate your imperfectness, then you can also accommodate that of your students. And then you can make a change and let your students to be change makers themselves instead of making orders. So these are the three features. Okay. So maybe you used different expressions, but I see you carving a diamond altogether on well-being, on inhabit, on imperfectness. Really gain a lot. And also, on one item of your dialogue, I was really moved that in terms of future, all we saw is robotics and the search for space, but you also mentioned nature and the feelings of human beings, emotions, and inner self. This is especially for the urban students. That is what they really lack. Maybe stuff like this do not exist in their childhood. The nurturing of nature, is that really significant to childhood? The nurturing to childhood for nature. I know that I know that NFH featured a great natural environment, and I really appreciated that. And I also see Mr. Andrew in Wonderful Nature. I was born after 1960, and my childhood also featured great engagement with the nature and well-being. But now, for our students today, their life is about digital devices. They're far away from nature. So, what kind of impact would that make to their children? Mr. Morgan, maybe you can go first.
I think outdoor education is very important in many dimensions. First of all, the children and youth, when they go out, they feel the nature, they feel close to the nature. And by having this emotional closeness to nature, they also open their senses for nature and for the importance of nature. Secondly, I would say that nature stimulates your fantasy, your curiosity, because you find animals, you find flowers, you find everything. You just discover it, and then you see it, and you feel it, and you observe it, and then you can have the explanation, the theoretical explanation, and learning later on. So it's also a kind of discovery way of learning, and I think nature gives us this ability to go out and to see, to observe, to watch, and to use your curiosity, and then you can go back to the classroom to analyze, to build on the theory, and to have a deeper all-around understanding of nature. And this process is very important, because if you sit in a sterilized classroom to learn about nature out there, it will only be academic knowledge. It will only be a special kind of brain knowledge. But when you go into nature, you have the feeling, you have the observation, you have the involvement, and then you can also, I think also you get more interested in nature and also in preserving nature. And science says that the more we bring out the children in nature, the more consciousness, the more awareness they have of the importance of nature in the future. So outdoor learning is really so marvelous for many children, and it should be much more taken in hand with children and youngsters, because human beings are nature. We have forgotten it maybe, because we make artifacts, we make cultural things, but basically our brain, our genes are from nature, from thousands of years ago, and anthropology tells us that, and we have to realize it also for the future, to be holistic people. And I think nature gives a holistic learning. You learn for the brain, of course, but you also learn for the body, you learn for the emotions, you learn for your hands also, because you can in the nature you can build bonfires, you can build cottages, and you can express your design abilities. So in nature you have the freedom, the space to do it your own, and also to socialize. I think in nature you have to work together, because you need your friends to help you to do some practical items. And when you do that, not only for pedagogical purpose, but for real doing something, that is stimulating the proudness and the learning value of the children and the youth.
Thanks a lot, especially for young children. Maybe learning in nature is the best way of learning. Andrew's childhood was really happy, and for your education in slow school. Actually, slow school feature online schooling, but as I mentioned that I am a digital nomad, I am a backpacker, I'm a hiker. I really agree with Mr. Morgan that nature plays a crucial part in human's growth, not only for children, but also for grown-ups. For example, for my own life, I would spend at least a month in a village in a year. For example, from July to August, I spent more than a month in a village in Yunnan of minor ethnicities. I was immersed in a really natural community. I would climb a mountain twice a day, in the morning and at night, and I would also work under the trees, which was really relaxing. Even though sometimes I'm in cities, I also find different cafes to build such atmosphere, and I will also explore the old streets and old towns of the cities, through which I could learn some new inspirations and enlightenments. Actually, when I was sitting in a cafe, I will understand and explore on how would the cafe owner understand beauty from their decorations and beyond, from their design, and also from my traveling in some old streets. I can also guess what has happened there. So, in the natural and social dimensions, our engagement in those elements would also bring us to a larger part, to a holistic part, to make us feel that we are part of history, of the society. We are not alone. Having this understanding could make us feel that, at least spiritually, that we are not alone. We are not loners. Even under great pressure, under stress, we can feel that we're not alone. We are connected to the outer world, so that we can be a part of the history, which is significant. So that is what I want to share. Okay. Thanks a lot. How time flies. Thank you so much. That was really fruitful. Now we are entering a society of lifelong learning and breakneck competition and tectonic shifts. Many changes are taking place today, but in terms of education, well-being, and what can indeed make us feel happiness, that wasn't changed. So from your dialogue, I was inspired that on how to become a happy educator ourselves, we need to first take a look to the future on how to cope with the situations in the future. First, we need to endow our children the ability to lead a great life in the future, and also we need to get back to nature, get back to our understanding of great nature, and we also need to accommodate the imperfectness of ourselves and also that of our children, and we also need to build an atmosphere of well-being learning. As educators, we grow with our children all together. Our concepts will reshape our decision, and that also decides whether can we educate children of well-being. So I would like to ask that the part that impressed you the most from the other guest today, we heard the expressions of Mr. Morgan, with who already looked like a happy educator from his smile and the vitality. I can perceive that even online. So I want to ask from the expression from the other guest, which part is the most impressive one? Okay. I think that from Mr. Morgan's expression, what impressed me most is that of human beings, as haven't seen him personally, and I also look forward to seeing him in Denmark or in China so that we can exchange face to face. What really impressed me
Thank you.
from Mr. Morgan is that how relaxed and calm he is as a human being. Yes, yes, we hope that we can all live like him in the future. And Mr. Morgan, from the expression of Mr. Andrew, which word impressed you the most? Mr. Morgan.
I was impressed by Andrew's lifelong development, that he was changing his career on the way. I think that's what we all should be able to and inspire to. So I think your life story, Andrew, is so interesting that you're put on one path according to your tradition, your parents, and your education, but then you can change, and you are really a change maker, Andrew. You have changed your life, and therefore you can also change the Chinese way of thinking, the mentality, I think. So congratulations with that.
谢谢。
好的，谢
Thank
谢。
you. I really appreciate that. Okay. Thank you both. So let's call it today for a dialogue, as this is an open dialogue. The future is not far. All human beings, all parents, all families are with their own way to respond to the task of building their imaginations of the future and how to translate their children to someone of well-being. So we are always on the road. We are always on a journey. So I would like to quote Mr. Morgan's
我们的
expression:
思考和我们应
our discussion will stop, but our understanding and our endeavors will always be on the road.
希望到那
Our
一天，
endeavors today will provide answers for tomorrow, and I hope that we will feel really happy instead of regretful about that. Okay, thank you both. Thank you all.
Thank you.
再见 ，Thank you，
谢谢，再见。
Thank you so much.
再
See you
见。
sometime. See you sometime. Okay.